Hi, everyone, and welcome to What is Social Inflation and Why is it Causing D&O Rates to Rise webinar. I'm Marketing Manager Sherry Branson, and I'm now joined by Kevin Davis. And Kevin joins me from Los Angeles. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Sherry, how you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Here we are, Kevin. It's October. Can you believe 2020 is almost over? And what a year.
Yes.
We will
Oh,
definitely
man.
celebrate on New Year's Eve. Look, I'm so looking forward to 2021.
You and I both. I mean, it's just been an unbelievable year, and we haven't seen each other. I haven't seen anybody probably about 6 months. It's just I'm really locked in here.
Yeah, I know. We're living in a virtual world. That's the only way we
Yeah,
see anybody now.
yeah, I know. So, I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to the day. This is going to be a great seminar, great webinar. We've been getting so many calls lately about what's going on out there, why we're seeing so many claims, and what's happening with rates and everything. So, definitely looking forward to it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very timely webinar with the rates going up, et cetera. And we're going to talk about why they're going up and what social inflation is. And I did want to mention that I record all of the webinars and I put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. You can click on our website and listen to today's recording and all of our past webinars as well. And I did upload the PowerPoint from today's presentation. If you look on the handouts tab on the toolbar on the right side of your screen, you can click on that and you can download today's PowerPoint whenever you get a chance. So Kevin, what is our goal today? What are we looking to
Sure.
accomplish?
Yeah. When we talk about our goal, we're talking about is social inflation and how these social inflations are really impacting the D&O rates. But even more importantly for us, because we talk about community associations, and there are new challenges out there that community associations are facing because of social inflation. So we're going to talk about the three trends. There are three trends that we're seeing that's impacting community association, and we'll talk about the importance of how D&O really responds to these three trends that we have to protect the community association out there. So that's what we're really going to talk about today.
Okay, great. That's great information. And now, the topic of the day is what is social inflation? Can you define that for everybody?
Sure, I'd be glad. Social inflation, it's kind of an interesting thing. It's one of those new latest buzzwords out there that insurance people are using, insurers are using out there. They use it to describe like the rising costs out there of claims because of social and economic trends, resulting for more litigation and larger jury awards.
Okay. Most people are familiar with regular inflation, at least I am. Prices go up gradually over time, home prices go up. And so we're talking about society and the trends in society and that increasing insurance rates, et cetera.
Exactly. What's happening is social inflation, these verdicts from these lawsuits are beginning to really increase rapidly over time. You start to see these larger and larger verdicts out there, things that we haven't seen before, and which is creating a major problem for insurers because if the rates are going up because of societal trends, it's really hard to predict the cost of a claim.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't predict society, right? We don't have a crystal ball where we can tell what's going to happen next year. Nobody saw COVID-19 coming, and
Yeah.
nobody saw that
Mhm.
happening. And that really changed 2020. We'll never forget it. And at one time, settlements exceeding 100 million were extremely rare, but now that's not the case.
Yeah, and I can tell you, slip and fall cases usually would settle around 300,000, right? Now we're seeing them up to $1.5 million. And we're also seeing several billion-dollar verdicts over the past 12 months. I mean, really huge. We saw it was a Monsanto case, right? The Monsanto case was $2 million because they had this Roundup weed killer thing that everybody had been using, but they found out it caused cancer, and all of a sudden they had a $2 billion verdict. Also, there's another $4 billion verdict against Johnson & Johnson because of the talcum powder situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those were all over the media, all over social media, all over the news. And that drives, I think, the emotions behind a lot of these big settlements.
And because of that, it caused a rise in insurance across the board. We're talking about every liability policy right now. We're talking about D&O. We're talking about auto, environmental, and umbrella coverage. All the stuff leads to, and you'll see in the umbrella where the limits are reduced, premiums are increasing, and they even start to add exclusions to the policy. Again, to try to make the insurers profitable again. And all this happened like in the past 12 to 24 months.
So it's really affecting everything across the board. Like you said, the exclusions, the premiums, the limits, et cetera. Now what's causing this social inflation?
Okay, sure. Now, this is the important part because there are many things out there that are really causing the problem. Historically, these lawsuits against corporations were the majority of it, was it. But now you're adding these social issues on there. And I'm talking about things like the bias created by social media and these various news agencies out there, you know, Fox News versus CNN. Okay. And what happens is when these jurors get, when the lawyers get to the jurors, they want these people to feel angry and they want to make things right in the world. So they want to attack these corporations out there.
They kind of portray the corporations as big bad, you know, the big bad wolf, like they're basically kind of getting emotions, looking at the corporations as cold entities and, you know, and turning emotions against them, basically.
Yeah, and now we have these millennials. There's a generational shift going on where millennials are taking over these juries.
Absolutely. Yeah, and millennials have a lot of different concerns than generations before. You know, they're concerned about privacy, climate change, pay disparity, and then other social and environmental issues as well. So, you know, that causes these issues to trigger a very large verdict. They're very concerned.
Exactly. That's it. And also, too, the jurors' concept of money has been more personalized. And now when you see these jurors in courts, they take things more personally, you know?
Yeah, they tend to put themselves in the plaintiff's shoes and have a lot of sympathy for the plaintiffs. And then as a result, you know, they're putting themselves in their shoes, so they're going to award larger settlements.
Exactly. Again, it goes back to this whole heartless corporation thing. Attorneys focus on heartless corporations to scare these juries into larger verdicts. And that's the bottom line of the whole thing. That's what we're talking about. You know? And for these insurance companies, it's really particularly difficult to predict because it's primarily controlled by social concerns. And again, we have social concerns and trends. How do you accurately predict what the outcome on these claims are going to be? You know, you can't predict the climate change or anything like that. You don't know. You can't do it.
Right. It's unpredictable. Exactly. There's no way to predict it. And now, now everybody who's joining us today is in the community association industry. You all work with HOAs and condo associations and co-ops, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit about community associations and social inflation trends and what's happening there.
Sure. Okay. One of the major concerns right now for community associations, have a responsibility of the board of directors has changed significantly over the past 6 months. You know, the board responsibility was primarily focused on budget, rule enforcement, and maintenance. But now they include social concerns like Black Lives Matter and people wearing their MAGA hats. I mean, this is the kind of things that really did not impact them before.
Right. A lot of new social problems that are happening and discrimination issues. That's always been there, discrimination, but now it's even magnified about what's going on. And then on top of that, you have COVID-19, you know, issues and enforcing the rules fairly, et cetera, regarding the pool and the amenities. I mean, there's a lot on their plate.
Yeah, and that's what we talk about. We talk about the three trends. We talk about the three trends. We're talking about discrimination and harassment. We're talking about COVID-19 issues. We talk about enforcement. Now, you're right, Sherry. Those things have always been there, but the difference is this: we're living here now. We're living in our community. We're not leaving. I've been living in my house here for the past 6 months, not moving. All the people living in community associations, and guess what? It's starting to crack. They're starting to have some issues there, and we're seeing it. And that's the reason why. And again, with social inflation, now where a claim might have been $10,000, $15,000, now you're talking about $100,000 and $200,000. You know?
Absolutely.
As you see in these community associations, it's really, really difficult to deal with these challenging and certain times. You know, the responsibility is constantly evolving and constantly becoming more complex. And as a result, that's why we're seeing these numbers of lawsuits rise and get higher and higher. And to defend them, it just costs a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's much more exposure to the board because of all these issues. And then in addition, you know, as you talk about the additional responsibilities, now they have to care for the health, safety, and welfare of the community in ways they were not prepared for before. Like I said, we never saw COVID coming.
And that's the point. Whether we're talking about COVID-19 or facing natural disasters like the fires we have out in California, or you in Florida, you get the hurricanes constantly in Florida, or economic losses, or societal issues like Black Lives Matter or who's running for president, they all affect community association because they disrupt the operation. And disruption creates this challenge to the board of directors because the association may not be given the authority to handle these these situations out there. Where the authority comes from to say that they have to shut the pool down or they have to be able to have a plan. Where's the authority?
Absolutely. I mean, and even if they had the authority, Kevin, the membership feel that the rules are unreasonable and shouldn't be enforced, like closing the pool or closing the fitness center, et cetera, especially when it's closed for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. You got these three new challenges to the board, has increased their liability dramatically. As a result, D&O claims are rising, and the need for higher premium is now more important than ever before.
Absolutely. And now we're going to talk about the increase in discrimination and harassment lawsuits.
Yeah, this is our first trend. This is what we're seeing right now, and it's really creating a big problem. I mean, you look at community associations today, they're more diverse. When I talk about diverse, I'm talking about ethnicity, race, religion, age, socioeconomic status. They're all having a major impact on these board of directors. They're dealing with issues they never had to deal before, you know, and a failure to properly address these issues head on could lead to serious issues involving things like libel, slander, discrimination, and harassment.
And that can get very expensive, very costly if they don't act on these issues, if they choose to just ignore them.
And we had an interesting case in the past where this involved a male resident that kept harassing a female owner, yelling racist and sexist remarks and even threatening her. She repeatedly complained to the association, and the board failed to act. They didn't do it, even though they were aware of the situation. They chose not to do anything at all. She sued the association, claiming she suffered emotional damages and sought punitive damages. The findings were that the association acted with reckless disregard to her safety and her rights. The board was ordered to pay. First of all, the board was ordered to pay for her home, to buy her home from her, purchase a home for her, and to pay damages. The total loss was over $1 million.
Wow. So this individual harassment claim cost the association a ton of money, and it was all because they just ignored it and they didn't take any action on it.
Exactly. And here's another example that again, we're going to see a lot, okay? You had a harassment complaint made by one board member because another board member was asked that had that one board member not to wear his MAGA hat at the meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, political statements at a meeting, then that could cause, I could see where that would cause problems. And
he brought up this whole First Amendment right to free speech and all that kind of stuff, and was really upset by the fact he couldn't wear it. Now, all he had to do, the board said, okay, once that directors, officers, board meeting commenced, it is board business. You know, after the business is over, he can feel free to engage in any political speech outside of the board meeting. But what happened is now you have a harassment complaint against an individual because he had a MAGA hat on. And guess what? We had the exact opposite happening on the other end, where a resident who lives in a 55 plus HOA, okay, she placed a Black Lives Matter sign in her bedroom window. Now she received an HOA president saying, and this again in her own bedroom window, to tell her take the sign down because a person wanted to sell the unit next to them, and they think that they will reduce the value of the unit.
Incredible. Okay, so either action or inaction, either or, you don't know if that's, one or the other could cause a problem, or both could cause a problem. If you don't act on something, or if you act on something and violate somebody's rights. Interesting.
The problem is, again, these are all societal issues, and societal issues that board of directors, what we want to do is ignore them. I don't want to deal with it. We don't know, should we stop this person from having a sign up or having a hat? We don't know. And then we become fearful of it. So we don't do anything at all. They hope the bad behavior just stops by itself because, it should, but it doesn't. And again, what happens is a failure to act can end up being extremely expensive.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the bottom line is don't ignore it, but make sure you get the proper advice on how to handle it. Because ignoring it, $1 million claim, that's nothing, that's not anything any association wants to face. That's very expensive. And I did want to take a second here to mention that the PowerPoint from today's presentation is uploaded. You just click on the handout tab and you can download the PowerPoint, and I record all of our webinars and put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. So great. So we just talked about the increase in discrimination and harassment lawsuits that we're seeing, one of the trends. And the second trend, Kevin, which we talked about a little bit earlier, we touched on it, is COVID-19.
Yeah. This is a big one. You know, right now in the first 3 months from March to June, we received 347 claim notices around COVID-19.
Oh, okay. That's a lot. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, the problem is COVID-19 has left many community association board members with more unanswered questions than answered questions.
Yeah. And so we've put together this list of 5 COVID-19 things that we are seeing that impact the community associations. So start with the first one. It's simple. Not having a plan to deal with the COVID-19. Okay? You got to have a plan. And you got to also have a plan if you're dealing with things like wildfires or hurricanes or floods and everything. Have a plan. What are you going to do? Are you going to close the pool? Are you going to keep it open? You know, are you going to service it? Are you going to keep it clean? I mean, what is the plan? Not having a plan creates a lawsuit, creates a claim for, creates a D&O claim. Second one, not closing common areas such as clubhouse, fitness centers, business centers, pool centers, athletic courts. It's a big problem. In fact, it's probably the number one claim that we're seeing is that people are upset because you close these things. And we're starting to see claims as a result of closing the pool and closing clubhouse and closing fitness centers.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is disclosing confidential information about residents who live in COVID-19. You cannot disclose confidential information. We see a situation where they actually said Bob, who lives on the 10th floor in a second unit, has COVID, so stay away from the 10th floor. Okay? You cannot do those kind of things. So you can't disclose information. Refunding of maintenance dues. Okay? We have a lot of people who live in these community associations who says, because I can't use the pool, because I can't use a fitness center, I want a refund of my maintenance dues.
Absolutely. And it's like we were talking about earlier, if they're closed for 1 week, that's one thing. But if they're closed for 3 months or 6 months, you can see why people would want a refund.
Yes. This is a big one I had, banning essential guests, vendors, short-term rentals, Airbnb, etc. One of the biggest, one of the biggest claims that was public was at Winston Towers, right? Sunny Island in Florida. You can even Google it, where they had a essential guest supposed to come in, a healthcare worker, but because the name wasn't written down as an essential guest, the person was not allowed to come into the complex. You know, vendors, contractors to come in just to maintain the common areas. You know, they weren't allowed to come in. People who have rental arrangements, they're not allowed to do an Airbnb. This is creating a big problem for community associations.
Yeah, a lot of them are banning the Airbnbs and saying that people from, I know in the beginning stages, there were some that were banning people from certain states from renting Airbnbs, you know, so then you get in that whole discrimination area.
All right, this next one is probably the most important, not reporting a claim in a timely manner. These D&O policies, because these are all D&O claims we're talking about. D&O policies have to, if you have a claim, they have to report it during the policy period. They are a claims made policy. If they're not reported during the policy period, guess what? They won't have coverage. So right now, all these situations are potential D&O claims. If you know that any association out there has one of these things happen, you have to report them. And a bigger issue is you have to be careful, because if you want to move a D&O policy, and one of the things may happen out there, they may have this notice, because every association out there right now may have notice of potential claim. You got to be careful when moving a D&O contract. You have to be very extremely careful, because when you sign that warranty statement saying that you may have no information that may give rise to a claim, you have knowledge and information of things that may give rise to a claim, because people are complaining because they want to refund their dues. People are complaining because you close the common area, the clubhouse. People are complaining because I can't use my rentals. I can't have my housekeeper come in. I can't have my vendors come in. So it's really important to understand right now that COVID-19 is going to be a really major problem for DNO right now and for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Make sure you report the claims and make sure you report them quickly, very quickly. Okay, great. So now we're moving on to trend number 3, which is an increase in enforcement claims. So let's talk about this a little bit, Kevin.
Okay. As I kind of said earlier, the board's exposure to liability losses has increased due to an awareness. It's an awareness of how individuals should be treated and who are the board of directors, who are these authority figures, who are the corporation that says, I can't do these things. I can't. What gives you the authority? Okay, now we know the governing documents give them authority, but we're always constantly challenging that authority because we don't believe the government is looking out for our best interest. We don't believe corporations look out for our best interest, and we definitely don't believe the board of directors of our condo is looking out for our best interests, which has led to enforcement challenges to the board because the board said it's unfair, it's discriminatory, it's unreasonable, and unenforceable. Because again, people who live in this community association believe they know their rights and they know when they're not treated fairly, and they want to be fairly.
And the interesting thing, Kevin, is many people that challenge this have never even read the governing documents. They've never read the CC&Rs. So they're challenging it, not realizing that when they moved into that condo association or that HOA, those were the rules in the beginning. And we have an example of one of my neighbors when I was in Texas. He was started to build a shed next to his garage, and they stopped him halfway through because he didn't realize he had to get approval from the architectural committee to build the shed. So he had to take it down. He was really unhappy about that. You know, and that could turn into a claim right there.
Yeah, and again, if you have these situations where they believe that they took it down, they could say, who are you to tell me to take this thing down? This is my shed, it's in my own property, even though it's probably in what's called exclusive use common area. The shed was probably building exclusive use common area, but they didn't have the authority to do it. And what they would do is challenge the board saying that, who are you to say I can't put the shed up? You know, it's an interesting one that we see quite a few. It's the unit owner upstairs who installs hardwood floors. You know, and downstairs it disturbs the tenants below. I mean, we see this and we see it all the time. Now, this problem with this one is that when they installed the hardwood floors, the person who had the hardwood floors did it because they were allergic to the carpet. That creates a bigger, different problem all of a sudden.
Right. They feel they have a legitimate reason to install the hardwood floors. They have allergies and they can't live with it.
And the board itself has to make reasonable accommodations to their request for hardwood floors. So now you have a problem here. As a board of directors, what do? You have a downstairs person complaining about the noise, the upstairs person saying, guess what? We have to reasonably accommodate you because you have a doctor's note saying you have an allergy. Now, if they went to their lawyers, like they should do, but they don't. What they do is they ignore it. The board of directors ignore it. And all you have to do is say, listen, either A, you install these hyperallergenic rugs throughout your unit, or reinstall the hardwood floors with proper soundproofing material underneath of it. Again, if the board fails to take appropriate action, it can result in lawsuits against the association by the owner because of failure to enforce the documents uniformly. That is one of the big problems that we're seeing right now.
So rather than ignore the situation, they should just try to mediate and come up with a solution where both unit owners are happy. And like you said, it's easily solved, either hypoallergenic carpet or soundproofing for the hardwood floors. So it can be solved. They just have to step in and do it.
Okay, so let's talk about a few things here associations can do to minimize the claim from becoming a problem. And again, to keep insurance costs down. I mean, that's the whole thing. We want to keep insurance costs down. And so here's like 8 things we kind of put together to really talk about what you can do for a board of directors community association to keep these costs down. The first one is treat it as a business.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the board members, Kevin, when they join the board, and people I'm sure that are joining us today understand this, they think it's a hobby or it's just fun, it's something fun to do, but it really is a business. And they have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, and they should realize that.
Yeah, and that's the problem is that if you think about it, if you have $100,000 community association, right, a $100,000 value, and you have 100 units, that's a $10 million corporation you're running. You're running a $10 million corporation, and you have to treat it as a corporation, not as a hobby or not as a social life. You got to do it.
Mhm.
Another thing is you have to request reserve studies at least every 3 years. You got to request a reserve study. You have to have a reserve study. There's too often the community associations out there have no idea when it's time to replace the roof. They don't know. Then all of a sudden, when it's time to replace them, when they start leaking, and you get the south-facing roofs and the north-facing, they replace half of them because the reserve study, they do it the right way, so you don't have a claim later on based on the fact that you didn't properly maintain the roofs, the common area.
Mhm.
You got an emergency plan. Simple. Have an emergency plan.
Absolutely.
Vet your contractors. Really important.
Mhm.
You have to be able to know that your contractors are licensed, you have insurance, got to know who they are. Because you don't, it always come back to you later on. If you don't budget properly for your contractors, it always comes back later on when they didn't do the job adequately enough.
Mhm. And one tip I'd like to throw in, my last webinar with Rachel from Travelers, she mentioned with contractors, if you're unhappy with a particular contractor and you find that the work isn't up to par or whatever is going on, to make sure you document everything in the file with that particular, regarding that contractor, what you're unhappy about or what you're happy about, et cetera. So there's a paper file and a paper trail on that particular contractor. So if you had to cancel the contract with them, you have proof. You have a paper trail.
Another thing, protect the association from COVID-19 claims. Hire a service to come down and make sure everything has been wiped down, make sure everything has been taken care of. You want to protect yourself because, again, if you have a COVID-19 claim where somebody gets sick, somebody gets hurt, there's death, there's not much coverage available out there. D&O won't respond, the GL won't respond. There's not many coverages out there that respond. So you have to protect the community associations all the time against somebody getting sick. Bodily injury is excluded under the D&O and is excluded under the GL for communicable diseases. So no, you got to do your own justice there. Like Sherry just said, document. You got to document. You have to document everything that's going on because at the end of the day, when you're sued, you want to be able to tell them that this is what's going on right now, and this is important.
Mhm.
Enforce the rules and regulation uniformly. One of the big problems we see in community associations that the main time they enforce the rules when they have that one association member out there they don't like. When that one member association that parks his car in business parking, the people waiting out there for the tow truck, they tow them away. Or a person who's walking his dog or have a dog, they shouldn't have a dog. They do that, but do not enforce it uniformly. They tell one person they can't build a shed, but then you look, 5 blocks over, there's a shed there.
Mhm.
So you have to enforce the documents uniformly.
Mhm.
And number 8, you have to have a comprehensive D&O insurance policy for community associations because it's a difference between community association claims and non-community association claims, meaning nonprofits, regular corporations. These things right here we're talking about today impact community associations. Bank of America doesn't have to worry about people swimming in a pool.
That's true.
Everybody swimming in a pool,
They're painting their house.
that kind of stuff. We do.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a different animal, a totally different animal. Absolutely. And I did want to mention, if anybody has any questions about what we're going over today, there's a questions box on the tab on the right side of your screen. Please type in your questions, and if we have time, we'll answer some questions at the end. If we don't have time to get to you, don't worry. I can email you the answer to your question or give you a call.
Okay, let's go to a summary. Let's kind of summarize what we're talking about here today.
Okay.
Community association board of directors, their roles have evolved. And as a result, they've evolved. People don't like what's going on out there. They have a problem with it. And board members don't know what to do with this evolution. They lack the experience, the expertise. They have no idea how to avoid these costly claims from social engineering, social inflation. It is becoming a big problem out there And they have to understand, board members are responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of the community association. They were never aware of that, the health, safety, and welfare against the association. Yeah, they got to understand that. Keep continuing to enforce the documents. There are 3 trends you have to be concerned about. COVID-19, increased discrimination and harassment claims. In fact, what I usually call is the weaponization of discrimination claims. They've been weaponized. They basically have been weaponized, and we have to deal with them that way. You know, and as a result, the increase in claims for the enforcement thing. So I think that kind of summarizes what we're talking about today. Sherry, what do you think?
No, I think we covered everything. You know, what's going on in the industry right now, and what's going on in the world, and how it's affecting community associations, and then us in the insurance world as well. Yeah, I think that covered everything. And
do we have any questions? Any questions?
Let me check, and I will check the tab and see if anybody has any questions. Feel free to type them in. I don't see, okay, I do see a question here. Let's see if I have a current board of director who is considering making a claim against a past board for agreeing to pay for patio doors of the unit owners. The governing documents state the patio door replacement is the unit owner's responsibility. Do they have a claim?
Okay, all right. Let's look at the definition of a claim. A claim is a written demand for damages or non-money damages, money damage or non-money damage. So it has to be a written demand against an insured. Okay, so and it sounds like it's a written demand saying that the board made a decision improperly. You have, yes, submit the claim to the D&O carrier. I would say right off the bat, if you think it's a D&O claim, submit the claim, because if you don't submit it, something called, it can come back to haunt you, really come back to haunt you, because failure to submit the claim in a timely manner can come back with a denial of the claim. It's really important to do that, because these are claims made and reported policies. You have to submit the claim and report it during the policy period. It is really, really critical.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And then I have another question that's come in. Can you go over the reserve study again? Thank you, Suzanne Thompson. Thank you for your question. Great.
Sure. Reserve studies are done, okay? And the purpose of reserve study is to look at the common area and see the useful life of the common area. How long do you have to take care of the common area, the roofs, okay? Take care of their front gate. They look at all of the boiler, anything that's all the things in it that can wear out over time. A reserve study looks at it and says, okay, the useful life of this will be another 5 years or 10 years. So you have a reserve study done, outline it, so you can start budgeting properly for the reserve. And once you budget properly for reserve, then when things wear out, like the roof, you can replace it without too much of a problem, without having a special assessment of $100,000 to replace the roof. So it's critical to understand that a reserve study and to update it every year. You know, because right now, if you're going to replace your roof today, it's going to cost you a lot more money than you replaced it a year ago. You know, because it's hard to get somebody to get up on your roof. It's hard to get somebody to have the material. It's hard to do it. So reserve study has to be done. It has to be updated, because it is totally different today than it was 1 year ago. And it'll be different a year from now when people do want to repair their roofs and everything, and either nothing's available or the people not available. So the cost rise as a result. The cost has changed because of what we've happened for the past 6 months. The cost of everything has changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great. And we have another question that's come in from Joel Davis. This is a traveler's policy, by the way. What was the name of the community in Florida that ran into COVID difficulties?
Okay, I will. I'm going to Google it right now. It was Winston Towers 500 Sunny Isle, I think it was Winston Towers Sunny Isle. Winston Towers 500 Sunny Isle. It is, Google it, and they have it tells you exactly what happened in there and how a claim can come up. I mean, it was just perfect when we saw it in there. It's a nice little article about what happened when a person tried to get in and they refused to have a healthcare worker come in, healthcare aide come in. Winston Towers 500 Sunny Isle. Just Google that, and you'll find out eventually there's a COVID claim.
Okay, just think of Winston Churchill, Winston Towers. Winston.
Towers. Okay.
And okay, and yeah, and the claims, I know, in the last webinar that we did about claims, the COVID claims, this one regarding a health aide that wanted to get into the building, we've seen them regarding closing the pools, closing fitness centers, mainly mostly over the common areas and the amenities, but then there's other issues that are coming up like Airbnb and short-term rentals, like you said, et cetera. So thank you for your questions, everybody. These are some really, really good questions. If you think of any other questions later on, feel free to send me an email. My email is sbranson@kdins.com. Feel free to shoot me an email anytime with any questions, and I'll give you a call, or I'm just looking to see if we have any more here. No, it looks like that's it for questions. And I did want to mention again, I record all of our sessions, put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. You can listen to today's webinar again, and I hope you downloaded today's PowerPoint. But thanks, Kevin. Thanks so much for a great webinar, great information. And thank you.
I'm still looking for the sunny isle thing. I'm trying to Google it and see what's in there. You'll find it in there. This was an interesting situation. I got to find it next time. I will let you know. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a great Halloween. Take care.